there are moments in life when everything changes in a single sentence. For me, it happened under crystal chandeliers, in front of 250 people, with cameras recording every second. My name is Kinley Savannah Marlowe. I'm 35 years old, and the night my sister tried to publicly destroy me was the same night she unknowingly destroyed herself. The Westin Crown Center Grand Ballroom was glowing with champagne light and applause. Glasses were raised, cameras were flashing, and my sister Brooke stood proudly at the podium delivering her victory speech as the newly announced CEO of Marlowe Nexus. She looked radiant, confident, untouchable. Then she leaned toward the microphone and said the words she had clearly been waiting all night to say. Kinley Marlowe is relieved of her duties effective immediately. Security will escort her out. 250 heads turned toward me at the exact same moment. Champagne glasses froze midair. A woman near the front actually gasped, but I didn't react the way Brooke expected. I calmly reached for the guest badge clipped to my black dress, slid it off, and rested it gently on the rim of my untouched champagne flute. Then I looked directly at her. "Tell Mom and Dad the board meets in 3 hours." The room went silent. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, heels clicking across marble, while camera flashes exploded behind me like paparazzi chasing a scandal. The double doors closed softly behind me. That was the moment the countdown began. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have. I slid into the driver's seat of my black Tahoe before the ballroom doors had even stopped swinging shut. Lee's Summit was 28 miles away, 32 minutes on a clear night, more than enough time. The radio stayed off while I drove. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the rhythmic click of my turn's signal merging onto a Minus 470. By the time I pulled into my garage, the house was dark except for a single motion light above the workbench. I didn't even go inside. The laptop I'd left charging since early morning was exactly where I expected it. Face recognition unlocked the screen. I opened the folder labeled Continuity. Everything was already prepared. Encrypted emails addressed to every board member. Certified packets ready for courier delivery. Digital signatures timestamped at 6:03 that morning. All that remained was one click. Then another. Send. Courier dispatch scheduled for pickup in 14 minutes. Done. People love to believe corporate power appears overnight. It doesn't. It builds quietly over years, when nobody is paying attention. Back in 2009, when Marlowe Nexus was still a 20-person warehouse operation in North Kansas City, my father offered me a comfortable executive title and a $180,000 salary. I refused. Instead, I asked for equity. He laughed and handed me 8%, joking that I could own the dirt under the building. I never sold a single share. 2 years later, when we expanded our Midwest cold chain network, I accepted another 4% instead of a bonus. In 2014, after Brooke nearly signed a disastrous partnership that would have cost the company $42 million, I quietly convinced the board to add an obscure protection clause to the shareholder agreement. They called me paranoid. I called it insurance. More acquisitions followed. More equity accumulated. By 2016, a tech startup acquisition handed me another 12% for structuring the deal. In 2020, when our parents wanted cash for their lake house remodel, I bought their golden shares at full market value. No family discount. No shortcuts. Piece by piece, year by year, the ledger quietly changed. Until one day, the numbers added up to 71% ownership under a single name. Mine. No announcement. No office plaque. Just paperwork sitting quietly in state filings where no one thought to look. I leaned back in the driver's seat and finally exhaled. Across town, my younger brother Dylan was live streaming from the gala, grinning beside Brooke, while captions like "New Era of the Family Business" flooded social media. He had no idea that era had exactly 3 hours left. Back in the ballroom, the first phone vibrated. Edward Morrison, the silver-haired attorney who had handled Marlowe Nexus contracts since 1997, glanced down at the message and instantly went pale. Without explanation, He grabbed my father's arm and my mother's wrist and pulled them through a service corridor away from the crowd. The narrow hallway smelled like hot catering trays and fresh flowers. Edward locked the door behind them. Then he handed my father the phone. Dad read the document once, then again. His eyes froze on one paragraph. Section C, Emergency Continuity Clause. A clause drafted in 2014 after Brooke's disastrous deal attempt. The language was brutally simple. If any executive without majority equity attempted to remove another officer unilaterally, their authority would immediately be suspended, and control would revert to the majority shareholder. My father's shoulders slowly collapsed. My mother read the signature at the bottom and began crying silently. Edward spoke quietly. "Rick, this went out at 6:03 a.m. Every board member has it. We're inside the 3-hour activation window." Dad whispered one question. "Does Brooke know?" Edward shook his head. "She's still cutting the cake." Out in the ballroom, my sister was laughing while photographers snapped pictures of her slicing into a towering champagne cake. She looked like the queen of a kingdom she believed she owned. Behind the scenes, the ground beneath her throne had already disappeared. My parents rushed her backstage moments later. Brooke entered the room smiling confidently, Dylan right behind her. "What is this about?" she asked casually. "Did Kinley run crying to you again?" My father said nothing. He simply turned the iPad around on the table. The latest ownership filing filled the screen. At the top was a single number. 71%, Kinley Savannah Marlowe. The smile vanished from Brooke's face. Dylan leaned closer, expecting a mistake, but the number didn't change. Brooke whispered, barely breathing, "This can't be real." Edward answered calmly, "It's state certified, filed this morning." Brooke tried calling me, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Blocked. Panic began to creep into her voice. "You let her do this?" she shouted at our father. He stared back coldly. "I signed the same paperwork you always did without reading it." Edward glanced at the clock. "You have less than 3 hours before the emergency shareholder meeting is legally triggered." The room fell silent. Then, every phone in the ballroom began to vibrate. The first message appeared on the chairman's screen. "Emergency shareholder meeting, Section C activated within seconds." Phones lit up across the entire ballroom like scattered stars. Board members opened the documents. Eyes widened. Conversations stopped. Security quietly moved to the exits. No one was leaving. On stage, the MC sensed something was wrong and tried to steady the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will have a brief announcement from the majority shareholder shortly." Brooke rushed back onto the stage, her confident smile now forced. "This is just a minor administrative update," she said quickly. "Please stay calm and enjoy the evening." Her hand trembled so badly the microphone screeched with feedback. Nobody believed her. Then the main doors opened, and I walked back in. No dramatic entrance. Just a black dress, a laptop under my arm, and 250 people suddenly falling completely silent. Every pair of eyes followed me down the center aisle. I stepped onto the stage and opened the laptop on the podium Brooke had abandoned minutes earlier. The giant screen behind us lit up with the secure voting portal I had personally built years ago. I spoke calmly into the microphone. "Good evening. My name is Kinley Savannah Marlowe. Under Section C of our shareholder agreement, I am calling an emergency shareholder meeting effective immediately." Phones rose around the ballroom. Votes began appearing on the screen. Green for yes, red for no. The chairman stood and announced the motion. Immediate removal of Brooke Marlowe Hastings as Chief Executive Officer and Dylan Marlowe as Vice President of Sales. The numbers began climbing. 58%, 61%, 64%. Employees who had worked under me for years voted without hesitation. Investors followed seconds later. 67%. Brooke rushed toward the stage shouting, "You can't hold a meeting like this." The chairman didn't even look at her. "The chair recognizes registered voters only." The numbers kept rising. 69%, 70%. Then the final percentage appeared. 71%. The vote locked, green across the entire screen. The chairman spoke the words that ended it all. Motion carried. All executive privileges are revoked effective immediately. The silence that followed felt heavier than thunder. Brooke stared at the screen like it might change. Dylan dropped his phone onto the marble floor with a crack. I closed the laptop. Then I clicked to the final slide. The screen behind me changed again. A legal addendum appeared. A 10-year non-compete clause. Brooke and Dylan were barred from working anywhere in the food supply technology industry nationwide. Their executive shares were revoked. Their dividend rights canceled. Every safety net they had relied on gone. Security stepped forward. 4 guards escorted them off the stage while Brooke twisted in their grip. "Kinley, please," she shouted. "We're sisters." I finally looked at her. Blood doesn't override contracts. The doors closed behind them, just like they had 3 hours earlier when I left the room. Except this time, they were the ones being escorted out. 4 months later, the company looked completely different. The nameplate on my office door read, "Kinley Savannah Marlowe, Chairwoman and CEO, no celebration." No announcement, just results. Quarterly profits rose 28%. Deals Brooke had stalled for years were signed within days. Investors returned. Clients followed. Stability sells. Brooke sold her lake house to pay off taxes after her shares were clawed back. Dylan applied to over 200 jobs before eventually working commission sales at a car dealership. Our parents quietly moved to a small condo in Florida. No farewell dinner, just a change of address notice. Brooke tried texting an apology once. I deleted it. Dylan left a voicemail asking for a reference. Trash. Because power isn't handed out at gala parties under crystal chandeliers. It's built slowly. Share by share. Contract by contract. For 16 years, I chose ownership instead of applause. And when the house finally collapsed, the foundation stayed standing. Because blood may share a last name, but it never shares the vote.